Welcome back to theZoomer. Before we wrap, joining us at the table is Stephen Mirando, a colleague here at Zoomer Media and one of the rare millennials who has successfully purchased his first home. Congratulations.
Thank you, Marissa.
It couldn't have been easy. Tell us about it.
It was quite difficult, I'll be honest. It's a long process. You have to plan for a lot of years. It's not, something that you decide to do a month from now or 2 months from now. But my question is, I just locked in for a 4-year at fixed rate. But I know that in the past, variable rate was the way to go. What do you guys think?
Well, I would say in general, the decision about variable rate versus fixed rate is a psychological one. Like, how can you sleep at night with the uncertainty of whether you're gonna all of a sudden have a spike in your payments?
It's pretty terrifying.
So that's a personality decision as opposed to an economics decision. Historically, variable rates tend to be better over the long haul than fixed rates. And right now, if I were to give advice, I would say it's pretty, all things considered compared to historically, there's a much greater chance rates are going to go down than they're going to go up. But as Brett said before, and we were talking, well, if the war in Ukraine breaks up or if there's a war in Taiwan, then the rates could go spiking and you're not going to sleep at night. So it's a tough call.
Jim, what would you have to say? Because I'll tell you, a year and a half ago when I renewed my mortgage, I originally was variable, and then at the 11th hour, I switched to fixed, and I'm very glad I did.
A year and a half ago, you had good timing there, Marissa, so maybe you should go into playing the futures markets instead of TV. I think the money might be better over there. Avi's point statistically is correct. On average, over time, variable rates are cheaper than fixed rates, and given the relatively high nature of interest rates right now, that argument is even more persuasive.
All right, Stephen, thank you. I hope they've answered your questions. And before we go, I'll ask each of my panelists, what your final thoughts are, and if there's anything else you'd like to leave our audience with today. Jim, I'll begin with you.
Well, unfortunately, I think things are probably going to get a bit worse before they get better. But eventually, I think we will come through this period of very weak growth and belt tightening. Hopefully, we learn from it, and that we look forward the next time we have something like a pandemic or a climate crisis or some kind of geopolitical crisis, that we've got the tools of government, including regulation, including community supports, including trade unions, to make sure we get through it fairly and strongly.
Avi.
One common point between Jim's suggestion, not surprisingly, that people join unions, and Brett's suggestion about voting for politicians is that they're both about taking action as a citizen. And I think things aren't going to get better on their own. In the same way that in the current job market, you usually can only advance by switching jobs, I think it's also true that you have to pay a lot of attention to switching governments and potentially switching allies wherever you work.
Yeah, I would also kind of end off on a positive note. A lot of the problems that we're facing today are not new problems. They're simply surfacing, and they're heightened because of interest rates and inflation. And if anything, what I hope is that we don't let this crisis go to waste. I hope this crisis spurs action that will create a better future, one that's more optimistic than what we've seen over the past 10 years. The pandemic was a particularly dark time, and we're seeing the after effects of that. And that's a real problem that millions of Canadians are facing right now, and there's real challenges and headwinds in their lives. And I hope what we look at that and we say, hey, on the housing crisis, can we take radical action to build more housing in this country to make it more affordable to buy a home? When we look at things like grocery prices, can we create more competition in the grocery market? Can we regulate existing players to ensure that Canadians are getting a more fair deal, that they can afford to buy their daily essentials? And when we look at things like the central bank, I think it's also worth having a conversation about, should there be more democratic participation in that process? Should us Canadians have more of a say in terms of what the inflation rate should be and what that might look like? All of these things are, like Avi said, are in our control. We can take action on them, and I think that would be a positive outcome from this dark time.
And just finally, Sylvain, go ahead.
I mean, I'm an optimist. I actually believe that things are getting better, but I am concerned about the younger generations for sure. I mean, the cost of living is actually quite high, and we are paying for a decade of free money. And that's really what's going on here. The shift is quite violent for the younger generations, but I actually do think that humanity will prevail. Let's give ourselves a chance. The last 3 years have been really tough for all of us. So let's give ourselves a chance a little bit.
All right, and as we close out, we hope that the information shared today will equip you for what lies ahead, whether it's a familiar territory or uncharted waters. And if you'd like to reach out, you can shoot us an email at comments@thezoomer.com. A big thank you to my panel and to you at home watching. As always, for now, it's time to zoom out.